Srimad Bhagavatam Introduction Part 6. While he was contemplating accepting the sannyasa order, it so happened that Keshava Bharati, a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school and resident of Katwa in Bengal, visited Navadvipa and was invited to dine with the Lord. When Keshava Bharati came to his house, the Lord asked him to award him the sannyasa order of life. This was a matter of formality. The sannyasa order is to be accepted from another sannyasi. Although the Lord was independent in all respects, still, to keep up the formalities of the Shastras, he accepted the sannyasa order from Keshava Bharati, although Keshava Bharati was not in the Vaishnava Sampradaya school. After consulting with Keshava Bharati, the Lord left Navadvipa for Katwa to formally accept the sannyasa order of life. He was accompanied by Srila Nityananda Prabhu, Chandrasekhara Acarya and Mukunda Datta. Those three assisted him in the details of the ceremony. The incident of the Lord's accepting the sannyasa order is very elaborately described in the Chaitanya Bhagavata by Srila Vrindavan Dasa Thakura. Thus, at the end of his 24th year, the Lord accepted the sannyasa order of life in the month of Magha. After accepting this order, he became a full-fledged preacher of the Bhagavata Dharma. Although he was doing the same preaching work in his householder life, when he experienced some obstacles to his preaching, he sacrificed even the comfort of his home life for the sake of the fallen souls. In his householder life, his chief assistants were Srila Advaita Prabhu and Srila Srivasa Thakura. But after he accepted the sannyasa order, his chief assistants became Srila Nityananda Prabhu, who was deputed to preach specifically in Bengal, and the 6 Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Raghunatha Dasa Goswami and Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, headed by Srila Rupa and Sanatana, who were deputed to go to Vrindavana to excavate the present places of pilgrimage. The present city of Vrindavana and the importance of Vrajabhumi were thus disclosed by the will of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord, after accepting the sannyasa order, at once wanted to start for Vrindavana. For 3 continuous days he travelled in the Radha Desha, places where the Ganges does not flow. He was in full ecstasy over the idea of going to Vrindavana. However, Srila Nityananda diverted his path and brought him instead to the house of Advaita Prabhu in Shantipura. The Lord stayed at Sri Advaita Prabhu's house for a few days, and knowing well that the Lord was leaving his hearth and home for good, Sri Advaita Prabhu sent his men to Navadvipa to bring Mother Sachi to have a last meeting with her son. Some unscrupulous people say that Lord Chaitanya met his wife also after taking sannyasa and offered her his wooden slippers for worship. But the authentic sources give no information about such a meeting. His mother met him at the house of Advaita Prabhu, and when she saw her son in sannyasa, she lamented. By way of compromise, she requested her son to make his headquarters in Puri so that she would easily be able to get information about him. The Lord granted this last desire of his beloved mother. After this incident, the Lord started for Puri, leaving all the residents of Navadvipa in an ocean of lamentation over his separation. The Lord visited many important places on the way to Puri. He visited the temple of Gopinath Ji, who had stolen condensed milk for his devotee Srila Madhavendra Puri. Since then, deity Gopinath Ji is well known as Kshirachora Gopinatha. The Lord relished this story with great pleasure. The propensity of stealing is there even in the Absolute consciousness, but because this propensity is exhibited by the Absolute, it loses its perverted nature and thus becomes worshipable even by Lord Chaitanya on the basis of the Absolute consideration that the Lord and his stealing propensity are one and identical. This interesting story of Gopinath Ji is vividly explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami. After visiting the temple of Kshirachora Gopinatha of Remuna at Balasore in Orissa, the Lord proceeded towards Puri and on the way visited the temple of Shakshi Gopala, who appeared as a witness in the matter of two Brahmana devotees' family quarrel. The Lord heard the story of Shakshi Gopala with great pleasure because he wanted to impress upon the atheists that the worshipable deities in the temple approved by the great Acharyas are not idols as alleged by men with a poor fund of knowledge. The deity in the temple is the Archa incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and thus the deity is identical with the Lord in all respects. He responds to the proportion of the devotee's affection for him. In the story of Shakshi Gopala, in which there was a family misunderstanding by two devotees of the Lord, in order to mitigate the turmoil as well as to show specific favor to his servitors, travelled from Vrindavana to Vidyanagara, a village in Orissa, in the form of his Archa incarnation. From there, the deity was brought to Cuttack, and thus the temple of Shakshi Gopala is even today visited by thousands of pilgrims on the way to Jagannath Puri. The Lord stayed overnight there and began to proceed toward Puri. On the way, his sannyasa rod was broken by Nityananda Prabhu. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 1.97. The Lord became apparently angry with him about this and went alone to Puri, leaving his companions behind. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 1.98. At Puri, when he entered the temple of Jagannatha, he became at once saturated with transcendental ecstasy and fell down on the floor of the temple unconscious. The custodians of the temple could not understand the transcendental feats of the Lord, but there was a great learned Pandita named Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya who was present, and he could understand that the Lord's losing his consciousness upon entering the Jagannatha temple was not an ordinary thing. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the chief appointed Pandita in the court of the king of Orissa, Maharaja Prataparudra, was attracted by the youthful luster of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and could understand that such a transcendental trance was only rarely exhibited, and only then by the topmost devotees who are already on the transcendental plane in complete forgetfulness of material existence. Only a liberated soul could show such a transcendental feat, and the Bhattacharya, who was vastly learned, could understand this in the light of the transcendental literature with which he was familiar. He therefore asked the custodians of the temple not to disturb the unknown sannyasi. He asked them to take the Lord to his home so he could be further observed in his unconscious state. The Lord was at once carried to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who at that time had sufficient power of authority due to his being the Sabha Pandita or the state dean of faculty in Sanskrit literatures. The learned Pandita wanted to scrutinizingly test the transcendental feats of Lord Chaitanya because often unscrupulous devotees imitate physical feats in order to flaunt transcendental achievements just to attract innocent people and take advantage of them. A learned scholar like the Bhattacharya can detect such impostors, and when he finds them out, he at once rejects them.